The 8-year-old had a fever and was given an antibiotic before he was discharged. But hours later, he started vomiting. They took him back to the hospital where he died. Jorge Mario Cabrera with the Coalition for Humane Immigrants' Rights says they doubt CBP's version of events.
We have in previous instances found irregularities are constant in the care of these migrants.
California Democratic Congressman Lou Correa asked the Homeland Security Secretary on Twitter, after 2 child deaths in a month, what's going on at DHS? Do we have to subpoena you to get to the truth? Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The partial government shutdown enters day 5. President Trump insists he won't give in until he gets the funding for a border wall.
Mr. Trump says he cannot say when the partial government shutdown will end, but he says the road to its end must be paved with money for walls along the southern border.
I can tell you it's not going to be open until we have a wall, a fence, whatever they'd like to call it.
As for the hundreds of thousands of federal workers impacted by the shutdown?
Well, I think they understand what's happening. They want border security. The people of this country want border security.
In a Quinnipiac poll conducted earlier this month, 54% of American voters opposed building a wall on the U.S.-Mexico border, and 54% said it's not necessary to improve border security.
Fox's Ellison Barber. Indonesian authorities are asking people near an island volcano to avoid the coast. An eruption and tsunami Saturday left more than 420 people dead. Rain Wednesday could cause the volcano's walls to collapse, leading to landslides and possibly another tsunami. U.S. markets open Wednesday after the worst Christmas Eve trading session ever. This is Fox News.
Whether you love history, nature, scenery, or good food, Jeff's Pirates Cove is the place to be. Originally established as Pirates Cove in 1953, it's the oldest remaining beach bar and restaurant in Guam. Located on Guam's rugged southeast coast, visitors for years have discovered the natural beauty wrapped in deep history. Come out and walk the entire 22-acre site. Stop by the Seaside Museum for a taste of local history and experience Jose's international menu with open-air dining. Stop by and see what you've been missing. Jeff's Pirates Cove in historic Ipan Talafofo.
Introducing Exchanged, Guam's first online and mobile remittance to the Philippines. Exchanged is the easiest and fastest way to send money to your family and friends anywhere in the Philippines. Download the Exchanged app or visit their website, exchanged.me. Sign up, remit, and get a chance to win a trip for 2 to Manila. Deluxe accommodations at the Belmont Hotel at Resorts World Manila. So sign up and remit now at Exchanged. Promo ends March 2nd, 2019. Conditions apply. Also avail of Exchange dollar to remit promo. Visit exchange.me for details.
There's concern over who will fill the void left by U.S. troops after they depart Syria.
U.S. officials are concerned Turkish military units will invade Syria and race to seize oil fields in the east, where U.S.-backed Kurdish fighters are located. Turkish and Turkish allied fighters could spark new fighting with the Kurds in Syria. Turkey calls the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces a terrorist organization. The Syrian government would also object to Turkish forces invading its country. In 1939, Turkey annexed a portion of northwest Syria, and both nations have been at odds ever since. At the Pentagon, Lucas Tomlinson, Fox News.
President Trump and the First Lady answered calls from kids on Christmas Eve as part of the NORAD Tracks Santa program. The president asked a girl if she believes in Santa, and she responded yes. Now the president is taking heat for telling that girl it was marginal for someone her age to still believe.
This clip of the president talking to a 7-year-old named Coleman going viral.
Are you still a believer in Santa? Because it's 7 is marginal, right?
People couldn't believe the president put that kid on the spot. The New York Times' Maggie Haberman wondering if she was watching POTUS or Larry David. A U.S. senator tweeting, "You can't make this up." Jane Metzler, Fox News.
Pope Francis spoke to a crowd of thousands at St. Peter's Square and offered his Christmas wish for fraternity. The pontiff urged people around the world to put aside partisan interest to find a political solution to wars in Syria and Yemen and conflicts in Ukraine and on the Korean Peninsula. He said our differences then are not a deterrent or a danger. They are a source of richness. And L.A. Lakers star LeBron James left the team's Christmas Day game against the Golden State Warriors in the third quarter with an injury. James reportedly suffered a groin strain and appeared to mouth the words, "I felt a pop." Coach Luke Walton said James will undergo an MRI on Wednesday. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a computer mouse. Looking at your checkbook filled you with dread. This year Christmas shopping will be harder, you said. Suddenly your heart rose as fast as it sank. You saw a My Christmas loan offer from your favorite bank. You visited a convenient bank office to apply, and knew you could count on a speedy reply. And then you realized Christmas would be just terrific because of your My Christmas loan from Bank Pacific. Conditions apply. Equal housing lender. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Boldly styled, meticulously refined. The 2019 ES350 features a longer, wider stance and a sleek coupe-like silhouette inherited from the flagship LS. The ES350 offers an ultimate level of comfort while cutting-edge engineering delivers a thrilling drive. Visit the Lexus showroom today at Atkins Kroll during the December to Remember sales event. Drive home a 2019 ES350 for 0 down and 1.99% APR for 60 months. Terms and conditions apply. See dealer for details. Experience amazing.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's how we start the program every day, as you're well aware. And you know, so probably you regular listeners to Tall Tales out there in our international radio listening audience know that it's because we place high value on constitutional rights and are always on the lookout for those who would take them away. And I have an example today. This is from Red State, one of the conservative emails that I subscribe to, and they report something that appeared in the New York Times. And this is what it says. New York Times wants to have credit card companies monitor sales of guns and ammo. That's a kind of a frightening thought, isn't it? The New York Times ran an article today that opens a new front in the progressive dream of restricting and eventually banning gun ownership. The story is headlined, quote, "How Banks Unwittingly Finance Mass Shootings." A New York Times examination of mass shootings since the Virginia Tech attack in 2007 reveals how credit cards have become a crucial part of the planning of these massacres. There have been 13 shootings that killed 10 or more people in the last decade, and in at least 8 of them, the killers financed their attacks using credit cards. Wow. Okay, so this is a dangerous combination then. People buying arms with credit cards. Maybe everyone should be required to pay cash for his firearm. Now, it goes on to say some use credit to acquire firearms they could not otherwise have afforded. Those 8 shootings killed 217 people. The investigations undertaken in their aftermath uncovered a rich trove of information about the killer's spending. There were plenty of red flags if someone were able to look for them, law enforcement experts say. Quote, "Banks will complain this is the government's job and it's not our job. But you know what? They are the only ones with the ability to do this," said Kevin Sullivan, a former New York police fraud investigator who consults with banks as president of the Anti-Money Laundering Training Academy. The article hints that credit card companies should be forced to monitor the purchases of every card owner and act to prevent purchases that appear to a computer to look suspicious. Whoa. I'll bet if we had that program right now, I would run a risk if I went downtown to buy a pea shooter, because I suspect my email is going to turn up as very suspicious, using all these code words like guns, firearms, marriage, male, female. I mean, these are definitely red flags. Out of the 13 mass shootings that have killed 10 or more people over the past decade, this is again a quote, 8 of the perpetrators used credit cards to stockpile firearms they otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford. Elected officials could force the financial system to act. In 29 states, consumers cannot use credit cards to buy lottery tickets because legislators don't want consumers racking up debt gambling. And under the Gun Control Act of 1968, firearms dealers must report if someone buys 2 or more handguns in a span of 5 business days. That requirement can be evaded simply by buying at more than one store. But a system involving the banks and credit card networks could have the opportunity to flag the purchases. So if you bought a firearm with a credit card, I don't know exactly how this would work, but my imagination is saying this. There would be somewhere, there'd be a data bank and a group of faceless bureaucrats maintaining this data group. And when red flags came up, like the ones I mentioned, well, let's go on with the article. The unstated part of the proposal is that if a transaction is sufficiently suspect that a bank thinks you may be a mass shooter. Now, banks are really good at making this kind of judgment, of course. Then, to avoid corporate liability, the bank will have to report you to law enforcement. Well, that makes sense. You know, if you're in that situation and you are aware of information, a statute that would require banks to keep track of this information could also require that it be reported, or also could state that failure to report would be negligent on the bank's part. Then to avoid corporate liability, the bank will have to report you to law enforcement. And law enforcement will have to show up at your house wanting to question you and take a look. Yeah, I can see it all now. Where's that Law and Order music? Hello, sir. You mind if we ask you a few questions? Lenny Briscoe knocking on your front door, wisecracking his way into your front room, asking to see the firearms that you bought. And if you don't want to show him the firearms that he bought, then he probably will have to tell the building inspector that your rain gutters are leaking, and that your sidewalk hasn't been properly shoveled, et cetera, et cetera. You watch Law and Order, you know what I'm talking about. But who would want the cops coming around knocking on their front door because he had bought something that he had a legally right, I'm sorry, they had bought something that they had a legally right to buy and had a constitutional personal right to keep in their home for self-protection. This idea of the cops coming to your house is profoundly anti-freedom, and worse than that, it really can't work. This is a rather dense New York Times reporter, is that redundant? Making the case that this is the silver bullet to stop mass shootings. And here's a tweet. Banks and credit card companies unwittingly financed mass shootings in Orlando, Las Vegas, and Parkland. at Andrew Sorkin shows in the special investigation. They also have the ability to flag mass shooters before they kill, if they use it. And this is from a guy named Nick Confessori. And another tweet. And this is Nick Confessori's mathematic background. Once again, I'm really sorry. I try to avoid coughing into that microphone, but just to be on the safe side, you hear me cough, don't get too close to the speaker on your phone or your iPad or your radio or whatever. Try not to spread those germs. Confessori grew up in New York and attended Hunter College High School. He was a politics major at Princeton, class of 1998. While at Princeton, he wrote for the weekly student newspaper, the Nassau Weekly. And here's a critic, David Musto. All people eventually buy soap. 99.99% of people never commit mass murder. It's a lot harder problem. Beyond the anti-science hubris of the New York Times claiming its stellar crew of investigative research journalists discovered the philosopher's stone that has eluded actual smart people is the real point to this story. But how many of those 500,000 people will be New York Times reporters? That would be the ones caught in the dragnet, or people they know. Answer, journalists are all about freedom as long as they are the ones determining what should be free. Never trust them. The article is simply a cry for the return of Operation Choke Point, where Treasury bullied banks into dropping firearms vendors as customers with the addition of ensuring harassment of private citizens who have committed no crime as a way of intimidating others. It goes hand in hand with New York's heavy-handed harassment of corporations with business relationships with the NRA. Having failed at their attempt to actually outlaw weapons, the left is now seeking to harness the witless energy of the administrative state in making gun manufacture, sale, and ownership as fraught and difficult as possible. Yeah, well, we're going to, here on Tall Tales, we're going to keep a lookout. And as I mentioned, when David Hogg turned into a media celebrity, I hustled off and bought a membership in the National Rifle Association. So I suppose that makes my emails even more suspect. Well, it's not hard to find out where I live. And I'm home most nights after about 7 o'clock. You know how it is for us senior citizens. But we're not going to change the way we do things here. We're going to stick with it. So that's the Second Amendment portion of the program today. And from there, we go to, what's the next part of the program? Yeah. And what do we call this part of the program, Real Joe Cruz?
Demi Cutney, Press the Meat.
Press the Meat, or Meet the Press. Yeah. Okay, so we critically examine the editorial offerings of each of our newspapers, perhaps not as critically as we criticize stuff we see in the New York Times, the Huffington Post, and some of these other left-wing websites, but we do criticize them when criticism is due. I have my blue pencil here, and whichever of the editorials proves to be the edgiest, the most hard-hitting, the most topical, more than likely will get my blue star for that day. And I start out usually with the daily news. And a little tip-off here, the odds makers are going crazy today, betting on which newspaper is going to get the coveted blue star. And you can get really short odds on the daily news. But if you want to bet on the Post, the odds are astronomically long. Here's the PDN. Our view, after long wait, patients finally have medical marijuana. Experts in the cannabis cultivation industry, as you were, after 4 years, Guam's medical marijuana program has issued a few growers' permits so patients are able to cultivate their own marijuana. It took 4 long years for elected officials to implement a workable version of the law known as the Kin Conception II Compassionate Cannabis Use Act of 2013. I think one of the reasons it took so long to implement was the name of it was so long. The only reason it is workable now is because the rules were changed to allow people to grow their own marijuana rather than waiting for the government to figure out how to execute the will of the people. So people now can do their own marijuana. I wonder if that's ever been tried before on Guam, people growing their own marijuana. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz? Do you think that's ever happened before?
Well, it's highly unlikely, sir.
Highly unlikely that anyone would grow his own marijuana on Guam.
I'm sure it's possible, though.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this, but my suspicion is that people have been growing their own marijuana on Guam for a long time without much interference from the government, one way or the other. The law was meant to alleviate the pain and suffering of people who might benefit from the use of medical marijuana. It was introduced in October 2013 during the 32nd Guam legislature and improved by voters in November 2014. Now, as members of the 35th Guam legislature prepare for their inauguration, the program's first seedlings are just beginning to sprout. I guess it would be fair to say that the program has taken root and is about to bear fruit. The program was introduced and approved with good intentions and should have been easy enough to implement. After all, many states with widely varying sizes and geographies have been able to introduce medical marijuana programs to provide compassionate care for residents. But for some reason, Guam's elected leaders embarked on a tortuous path full of legal obstacles and impossible hurdles. When the program was at a complete standstill, when it was clear that the requirements for a dispensary would never be met, lawmakers approved home cultivation. I wonder if I could introduce a new word into this sentence here. But for some reason, Guam's elected leaders embarked on a tortuous path full of legal obstacles and impossible hurdles. I wonder if it would be appropriate to introduce the word ineptitude here. What do you think, Real Joe Cruz?
That would be fine, sir, if you did.
Yeah. I think perhaps a lot of the so-called problems here, well, one of the problems is, of course, that there's a national law against possessing, cultivating, dealing, etc., marijuana. It's contraband in anybody's hands. So that's a problem. And the second problem is that our government has not set a really good track record at regulating anything. Cigarettes, a major cigarette vendor was $13 million behind in his taxes and was still able to renew his business license. Restaurants, you name it. We're just not very good at regulating things. So to take on something brand new like marijuana, that's asking for a lot, especially when it's against the law to deal in marijuana. So repeating that sentence, when the program was at a complete standstill, when it was clear that the requirements for a dispensary would likely never be met, lawmakers approved home cultivation. Now the law allows patients and caregivers to obtain a grower's permit from the Department of Public Health and Social Services so they can grow and possess as many as 6 flowering plants and 12 juvenile plants at home. Public Health Acting Director James Gillen says he hopes permit holders understand that the allowance for home cultivation is only in place until the medical cannabis program is up and running. If that's the case, the home growers and their caregivers should stock up on gardening gear and figure out how to keep the plants watered. It could be a long time before we have a program. We have the program that was approved by the voters. My cynical side here is going to show again. I didn't think this was a good idea from the very beginning. It has not proved to be a very good idea. And I can't see really very much good coming from it. We are once again 160,000 people here. And to make comparison with, say, with a state like Colorado that has its medical marijuana up and running, California, et cetera, there are some things that we'll never be able to do here because there are only 160,000 people here and the economies of scale just aren't there. On the other hand, there are some things that we can do very well here because we're not overcrowded like some parts of the northeastern part of the United States. So someday we may have folks in office who figure out what it is that we can do really very well here that can't be done very well everywhere else. I don't think medical marijuana happens to be one of those things. But I'll keep watching and waiting and of course, commenting on the phenomenon as time goes on. Okay, now I mentioned earlier that the odds makers were going wild today on which of the editorials would get the Boy, I'll be back in a minute.
John Gibson, digging up history. The so-called monkey trial of John Scopes in 1925 was supposedly about teaching evolution, but it really wasn't that at all. That story after this. Are you tired of getting ripped off by Obamacare? Are you confused by the options? Did you know there are advisors who will help you at no cost ever? Call Amy Yarborough, a trusted health insurance broker licensed with many carriers in 22 states. Amy and her team will get you the best plan and save you time and money. Amy Yarborough. Call her at 817-914-5835. That's 817-914-5835. Amy's team at 817-914-5835. Back to my story. The famous Scopes trial in 1925 about teaching evolution was the trial of the century, the first to be broadcast live on radio. John T. Scopes, charged with the blasphemy of teaching evolution, was actually a football coach who occasionally subbed for the biology teacher. As it turns out, the whole trial was a scheme to get national attention for Dayton, Tennessee, a PR stunt. The phony trial was cooked up by the city fathers in a meeting at the local drugstore. They even asked Scopes if he wouldn't mind being charged and put on trial. After all the legal thundering about Darwin versus the Bible, Scopes was convicted but let off on a technicality, and evolution is still taught in American schools. I'm John Gibson, digging up history.
For over 30 years, Sanford Technology Group has been helping companies throughout Guam and Micronesia with their payroll, time and attendance, networking, and other information technology services. Our online integrated payroll and time and attendance solution provides the workforce management tools and expertise to make your business more efficient and employee-friendly. For more information, visit Sanford Technology at 335 South Marine Corps Drive or call us at 647-0220 to schedule a demo today.
Sanford Technology Group. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959. Now you can start planning for the holidays by getting a personal Christmas loan from $1,000 up to $3,500. Family Finance has 3 convenient locations to serve you. Give them a call in Dededo, 633-4473, Hagåtña, 475-4545, and the Upper Tumon location on the 2nd floor of the Pacific Building at 647-5626. Get your Christmas loans today from Family Finance.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Yeah, so here we are back again. I mentioned earlier in the show that the odds makers are going crazy here, taking bets on which of the 2 editorials will get the coveted Blue Star today. Well, you've heard the Daily News editorial, and it's an editorial. It's not, I've seen better. They've done worse. But here is what the Post editorial looks like. Yeah. The reason the Post editorial looks like a blank piece of paper is because there was no Guam Daily Post today. Yeah. I don't know. They must want to be an agency of the government of Guam or something like that. Yeah, there was no Daily Post today, and since there was no paper, of course, there was no editorial. So they forfeited the coveted Blue Star to the Daily News. There it is. And the Daily News, when so few of them, I guess they'll take one however they can get it. But that's how it came out today. So, as I mentioned, if you bet on the Post, you probably got really long odds, but your chance of winning were really, really slight. Okay, so that's Jemmy Ikotny for today. Now we go to the Daily News. I'm sorry, the Daily News, to the card. And I've got a couple pretty good ones here. I've got Lulian Guerrero versus 250 million bucks. I've got the United States versus military retirees. And if you are a military retiree or want to be a military retiree someday, you want to make sure that you listen carefully to that part of the program because it's very interesting. I don't know how important it is, but it could potentially be quite important. But the first thing we do with the card is we do the law lecture. And as I've explained before, we spent a lot of time talking about the laws of Guam and the laws of the United States and the Constitution, etc. And I just thought it would be well if our international radio listening audience had some knowledge of the laws of the other states. So we're all the way up to Massachusetts and Michigan today. So we'll start with Massachusetts. In Salem, Massachusetts, even married couples are forbidden from sleeping in the nude in rented rooms. Yeah. That's one of those blue laws, I guess. Yeah. In Massachusetts, it's illegal to wear a goatee without a license. Maybe that's why Ray's wearing a full beard. Maybe he's planning on going to Massachusetts and doesn't want to go through the rigmarole to license a goatee. In Halethorpe, as you were, in North Andover, Massachusetts, it's prohibited for a citizen to carry space guns. Yeah. I wonder if, in the absence of space guns, if they get in a spot with the police, they could ask Scotty to beam them up. All you old Star Trek fans, beam me up, Scotty. There's no intelligent life here. And in Massachusetts, state legislation forbids dueling with water pistols. Now, I could understand that kind of. If you're going to duel, why don't you get yourself some real pistols? Don't horse around with water pistols. In Boston, it's illegal to take a bath unless one has been ordered by a physician to do so. That's Boston. And in Massachusetts, in 1659, the state outlawed Christmas. This must have been Senators Scrooge and Marley that sponsored this legislation, right? And we go from there to Michigan. In Clawson, Michigan, it's legal for a farmer to sleep with his pigs, cows, horses, goats, and chickens. I imagine this is quite an incentive for young men to become farmers in Michigan. In Michigan, state law stipulates that a woman's hair legally belongs to her husband. And in Detroit, Michigan, it's illegal to make love in a car unless it's parked on your property. I guess this would be a parking ordinance then. In Detroit, Michigan, it's illegal to ogle a woman from a moving car. If you want to ogle a woman, pull over, stop. In Port Huron, Michigan, the speed limit for ambulances is 20 miles per hour. You wouldn't want them to get into an accident on the way to the hospital. Under state law, in Michigan, dentists are officially classified as mechanics. I'm going to mention that to a couple of my dentist friends. Classified as mechanics. Okay, well, that's our law lecture for today. And from there, we will move into the calendar. And as I mentioned before, the calendar items are kind of sparse nowadays here in the Christmas season. You don't have as many one-on-one fights as we had, especially leading up to the election. So the talk show host's job is a little bit more difficult because talk shows thrive on controversy. But I'm going to start out today talking about Lou Leon Guerrero versus $250 million. I'm sorry, $250,000. And this is from yesterday's Daily News. Preparations for Guam's, quote, historic inauguration in full swing. Events to cost about $250,000. About $250,000 worth of preparations are in high gear for the inauguration of Guam's first female governor. And organizers said the four-part festivities will be a celebration of both island heritage and new leadership. Oh boy, a celebration. Former Senator Leon Guerrero will be sworn in as governor, and Josh Tenorio as lieutenant governor at 4 p.m. on January 7th at Plaza de España in Hagaña. And then the next sentence says, there won't be a strike of midnight swearing in. I think what the writer means here is there won't be a stroke of midnight swearing in prior to the public inauguration, which has happened in the past. There won't be a stroke of midnight swearing in prior to the public inauguration, according to Sinajana Mayor Robert Hoffman, co-chair for the 13th Inaugural Festivities Committee. About 2,000 people are expected to attend the 2-hour ceremony, which will include a celebration dinner and live entertainment. If rain is forecast, the inauguration ceremony will be held at the University of Fieldhouse instead, Hoffman said. The inaugural facilities, wow, I don't know if it's my cold or what, but I just can't seem to do anything with my tongue today. The inaugural festivities will be rich in symbolism and pay tribute to the role of women in Chamorro society, coupled with some modern interpretation of traditions, Hoffman said. I'm going to hold my comments till I get to the end of this, but it's a kind of a struggle. It's going to be a historic event in so many senses because there's going to be deep symbolism behind every movement, everything that's going to be given, everything that's going to be said has a purpose and a meaning, Hoffman said. And it's going to be something that's a mix of both their personalities and both their upbringing. So I think people are going to be in for a beautiful celebration. The 4 major inaugural events are expected to cost about $250,000, which Hoffman said is paid for by sponsorship, not by public funds. Now I'm going to stop there. So we're going to have individual people pony up money to pay for an inauguration celebration, which this piece calls it. It's a celebration and something of a show with their own money and at the beginning of a gubernatorial administration. Now, is this the way we would want public officials to start out, creating an aura of impartiality? Impartial meaning, hi, I'm your new governor. I'm going to fulfill my duties and in as fair and impersonal way as I can. I'm not going to use the opportunity to punish my enemies and reward my friends just because I'm the governor. And, you know, I did take some campaign contributions on the way. I've reported all those. That's over now. I'm the governor, and no more of that. That's kind of a message that would go very well, I think, in these times. But no, instead, we're going to collect $250,000 slush fund to throw a nice party for the new governor. Is this a good way to start off an administration? What do you think, Real Joe Cruz? If you go to the party, I guess it's okay, right, Real Joe Cruz?
I think so, sir.
Yeah.
We're not paying for it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And then the article goes on to say food catering alone will cost $30,000. I suppose your opinion would also be determined on what the food was, right, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Okay. Hoffman said not only is Guam going to witness the swearing in of its first female governor, but also its first openly gay lieutenant governor. Does this mean we'll be treated with rainbow flags at the inaugural site? I never could understand why I would want to be excited by the fact that we are electing our first openly gay lieutenant governor. If Josh Tenorio can do a good job as governor, I'm all for it. If he doesn't do a good job, then I'll be very disappointed. Other than that, I don't much care. And I don't know why I have to, I have to keep reading this. Well, it's also the first openly gay lieutenant governor. It's going to highlight both of their backgrounds, Hoffman said. The people of Guam are going to see a peaceful transition. Yeah, now we used to do this at the point of bayonets, right? They're going to see history, and I think that alone is something people will remember. It's going to be broadcast live on PBS. There will be a mass kicking off the 2019 inaugural festivities is a 9:30 a.m. inaugural mass at Dulce Nombre de Maria Cathedral Basilica in Acatnia on Sunday, January 6th. I think probably there will be a mass at 9:30 at the Basilica in any case. Monsignor James Benavente will officiate the mass with Father Mike Chrysostomo delivering the homily, since Archbishop Michael Burns will be off island at the time. The following day, Chief Justice Merriman will swear in Leon Guerrero, and while presiding Judge Lamareda will swear in Tenorio. Presidents, governors, and other dignitaries from the CNMI, Palau, the Marshall Islands, and the Federated States of Micronesia, as well as other regional and federal officials, will be in attendance. And then we're going to close some roads. Roads to and from the Plaza de España will be closed by noon. There will be off-site parking, including the Lou and Josh Transition Office parking lot and the Agatnia Pool parking lot, plus 2 other locations to be announced later. From there, people will be shuttled by buses to Plaza de España. On Tuesday, January 8th, Leon Guerrero will lead a flag-raising ceremony at Adelup. Shortly after that, the new governor will swear in members of her cabinet. The inaugural ball will be held on 2 nights, Friday, January 11 and 12 at the Dusitani. And all the 100 per person tickets have been sold out. Shucks. Yeah, okay. So I suppose even on the 26th of December, the Grinch is still around here, and if he won't do it, I have to do it. This is not what I was hoping for at all, regardless of who the new governor was. Well, little Carmen's Boogie, and then we'll come back and wrap this up before the big halftime show.
Because I just signed up for a 12-month iConnect plan, I'm automatically entered into iConnect's Connect and Win giveaway. iConnect is giving away a trip for 2 to Manila with a stay at the new Holiday Inn Express. They'll also be giving away an Apple Watch, Apple TV, more Mabuhay miles, Fitbits, and Beyond the Box gift cards. Go to iConnectGuam.com for details or call 888-8888 to learn how you can connect and win with iConnect.
Conditions apply.
Chili's 3 for Me menu just got bigger. We're giving you more choices for the same great price. For just $15, you can get a beverage, salad, and an entree. First, choose from a refreshing Coca-Cola, iced tea, or Heineken on draft. Then enjoy a house salad and select your choice of a mouth-watering entree, like our half-rack ribs, Cajun chicken pasta, old-timer burger, personal chicken fajitas, or the flavorful margarita flatbread. So hurry in today and enjoy our Chili's 3 for Me menu for just $15. Available for a limited time. Chili's, more life happens here.
So here we are back again, and I'm carefully expressing my dissatisfaction with the way the new administration is going to start. I've got more to say, but one of our international members of our international listening audience, a Tall Tales Nation citizen, chimes in. Jose Martinez says, since superlatives seem to be in order, Lulian Guerrero will be Guam's first openly pro-abortion governor. Yay! Now, is that something I guess we ought to really trumpet from the rooftops also? We have our first openly pro-abortion governor. And then Jose follows that up by saying, the inaugural Mass ought to have a homily admonishing abortion and abortion supporters. Well, you know, if we're going to carry this thing to its final conclusion, I think the logic of Jose's position is unimpeachable. So, as I was saying, this is not what I was hoping for the new administration, how the new administration would kick off. If you want to show the government that you're comfortable spending other people's money, well, then throw a $250,000 party for yourself and call it the inauguration. The inauguration, according to Robert Hoffman, who is one of the co-chairs, and Jose comes back as well, the inaugural Mass ought not to celebrate the election of the governor and lieutenant governor, since truly a Mass is never about people other than Jesus Christ. It ought to be about praying for these two, not congratulating them. Well, I don't know where we keep coming up with these ideas. It's kind of like we want to spoil all the fun. Yeah, well, I do. I want to spoil all the fun. Taking over as governor now, given what we've been through with 8 years of the Tenorio administration, should not be looked upon as amusement. There are really serious decisions that have to be made, and I would hope that really serious people can make them. And what is the easiest way to convince someone that you are serious about what you're doing? Well, it's by acting serious. But here we are. There'll be symbolism behind every movement. Everything that's going to be given, everything that's going to be said has purpose and meaning. And it's going to be something that's a mix of both their personalities and their upbringings. So I think people are going to be in for a beautiful celebration. Yeah. Well, you know, I think what the inauguration has to consist of is I think that the incoming governor and lieutenant governors have to take oaths of office. And it's really easy to find the oath of office in the Organic Act. And paraphrasing, the new governor and lieutenant governor swear, the governor swears to faithfully execute the laws of the United States applicable to Guam and the laws of Guam. And both swear fidelity to the Constitution of the United States. That's what it's about. You know, I don't think it's about their personalities and their upbringing and stuff like that. That kind of stuff has some weight in the campaign, because in a campaign, one of the things a candidate has to do is kind of show the people who they are. But, you know, come on, Lou, you won. It's no longer necessary to go through this unless my first conclusion about your chat with Donald Trump at breakfast was that it wasn't about Guam, it was about you. Remember, you told Donald Trump all about yourself, and just before he cut you off, you got a few words in about Guam. So I would hope the inauguration is about the government and the people and the fidelity of the new governor and the new lieutenant governor to those people, not an opportunity to show off, which is kind of like how it looks from Robert Hoffman's description. And I guess I just didn't move fast enough on those inauguration tickets. And I don't know that I'll be at the inauguration ceremony either. It's good that it's on PBS, so I could watch it at home. So at the beginning here, at the start, not so hot. New first female governor, and first openly gay governor, and first openly pro-abortion governor. I hope this is not a foreshadowing of what your administration is going to be. Spend a lot of other people's money, a lot of show, and not a whole lot of good government. I really hope I'm wrong. Okay, so much for that. I guess maybe I ought to take a minute here before the big halftime show to welcome folks back, Real Joe.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back, Dave Duenas, and Merry Christmas to you and Brad, Ishmael Velez. Brad Hewitt says, hope you're feeling better today. And Ishmael Velez says, thank you, I'm feeling great. Tom Van Engen. Brad Hewitt refers to a literary mention that I had made as the New York Slimes. Carl Gutierrez with an early Happy New Year. And same to you, Governor. Happy New Year. James M. Schmidt. More of a Gibson topic. Any relationship to the story about the Guatemala kids passing away after being treated in the hospital? And the boy who passed away after being treated at SDA? I don't know anything about the boy who was treated at SDA. Do you, Real Joe Cruz?
No, sir, I do not.
Yeah. Since there wasn't any post today, I guess we're all kind of behind on the news. As far as the Guatemala kids, you know, there is some national news reporting, and I don't know anything more about it than that. I guess my cynical side comes out again when parents expose very small children to knowingly dangerous conditions and things don't work out so well. I don't think any of us can be surprised unless we succumb to the left and perhaps station hospitals on the other side of the border to make to ease the admission of illegal aliens into the United States. And Brad Hewitt says that theory about purchasing firearms would not work in some freedom-loving states where an individual might buy privately from another individual or in gun shows from a non-licensed dealer. In Texas, at gun shows, you can buy privately in the parking lot at a table via a licensed dealer or from a private dealer. Guess which one of these three gets the most business, the least business at the shows? But, of course, Brad, we all know that everything's bigger and better in Texas. So here's a quiz question, Real Joe Cruz. Do you know what happened in 1845?
No, sir, I don't.
Texas annexed the United States.
Okay.
And let's see, Dr. Brad says, try a little Mucinex. Pick up some Robitussin CF. CF would work better for the sounds you're exhibiting. Okay, good diagnosis, Brad. I'll see what I can do. And I've got Albert Elasson, and I already read Jose's comments. And Carl Borja Nelson is signed in. So, okay, I'll see you right after the big halftime show.
point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No plans to lift the shutdown. I'm Richard Jordan, Fox News. President Trump says he doesn't know when the partial government shutdown will end, but on Christmas Day, he reassured the 800,000 federal workers that are either on furlough or working without pay that all will be well.
It's going to all work out. But many of those workers have said to me and communicated, stay out until you get the funding for the wall. These federal workers want the wall. The only one that doesn't want the wall are the Democrats, because they don't mind open borders.
Democrats and the president are deadlocked in negotiations for border wall funding. President Trump says he's confident in his Treasury Secretary even after the market's worst Christmas Eve ever.
Monday, the Dow dropped more than 650 points after a weekend in which his Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, called major banks to ensure they were liquid enough to keep lending. Tuesday, the president said he still has confidence in Mnuchin and said while the Federal Reserve chairman is raising interest rates too quickly, it's a form of safety for an economy that he says is doing well. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection is conducting new medical checks on every child in its custody after the second reported death of a minor in a month.
Border Patrol says they are reviewing the death of an 8-year-old little boy from Guatemala. The child reportedly began to show symptoms of illness while in the custody of Border Patrol on Christmas Eve. According to Customs and Border Patrol, they took the little boy and his dad to a hospital in New Mexico. They say the child was initially diagnosed by hospital staff with a common cold, and ultimately the hospital decided to release him with medicine. They say that later in the day the child started to exhibit symptoms of nausea and vomiting, so they took him back to that hospital. He died at the hospital in New Mexico shortly after midnight on Christmas Day.
Fox's Ellison Barber, Customs and Border Protection, says it will focus on medical screenings for all children under 10. This is Fox News.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Hafa Tritons. This is Tito Castro, proud alumnus of the University of Guam class of 2015 and president of the UOG Alumni Association. As a working Triton and first-generation college student, I know the value of a university education and call upon my fellow alumni, parents, and friends to make that education affordable and accessible to all during this year's G is Forgiving campaign. To make a tax-deductible donation, log on to supportuog.org by December 31st or call 735-2957 for more information.
Viva UOG!
In Indonesia, the search continues for those missing after a powerful tsunami hit over the weekend.
Over 400 people dead, over 100 missing, 16,000 homeless, and people are simply devastated and, yes, very scared that there could be another tsunami as the volcanic activity that led to the first one continues and between the islands of Java and Sumatra in Indonesia. There was panic as a false alarm went off, but people were trying to salvage some goods to make a little money in markets, even though most residents are in shelters now. This amidst worries of disease spreading given the conditions you see and people having enough medical supplies to keep them from getting sick.
Fox's Amy Kellogg. South Korean officials traveled to North Korea for a groundbreaking ceremony. The project will modernize North Korean railways and roads and connect them with the South. The ambitious project is among a variety of peace gestures agreed between the North and South. However, the project likely won't amount to much without the removal of U.S.-led sanctions against the North. In the U.S., gas prices are lower this Christmas.
If you're driving home from Christmas visits, you're probably thrilled with gas prices. The national average this holiday was $2.32 a gallon for 87 octane. That's 12 cents a gallon lower than last Christmas.
Fox's Evan Brown. The search is on in Colorado for suspects in a jewelry heist.
Investigators say 3 men got away with $800,000 worth of diamond-encased jewelry from a display case in the lobby of a hotel in Aspen. Police say one of the men used a screwdriver to pop open a locked case. The trio got away with a necklace, at least 1 ring, and a set of earrings. Police say a whole team is working to find the thieves. Marcus White, Fox News.
Now that your Christmas stocking is empty, don't forget to check your pockets. Tuesday night's Mega Millions drawing is the largest Christmas Day jackpot, $321 million. I'm Richard Jordan. This is Fox News.
Because I just signed up for a 12-month iConnect plan, I'm automatically entered into iConnect's Connect and Win giveaway. iConnect is giving away a trip for two to Manila with a stay at the new Holiday Inn Express. They'll also be giving away an Apple Watch, Apple TV, more Mabuhay miles, Fitbits, and Beyond the Box gift cards. Go to iConnectGuam.com for details or call 888-8888 to learn how you can connect and win with iConnect.
Conditions apply.
At the heart of everything we do is our mission to improve the life of every child. From mungy nennies to growing teens, they'll be in trusted hands at FHP Health Center, where we offer comprehensive pediatric services to nurture and protect your child's health from day one. Begin your little one's journey to good health at FHP with seasoned pediatricians and professional staff who hold decades of combined experience. FHP Health Center, our island, your clinic.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Sanford Technology Group, STG, delivering service that can't be beat.
Grand as it is, I suspect that the big halftime show that we have every day at 5 will pale in comparison to the Lou Leon Guerrero inauguration. And just to wrap that up, I don't think I'll ever see this, but I look for the day when an inauguration day comes and the governor-elect says, I'm going to be sworn in on the steps down at Adelup at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you want to come on down, bring something to drink. Bring your water along to drink, because I'm going to be sworn in and I'm going to go right to work. I think that would resound so well with the people if anyone would ever do that, but I suspect that it's not going to happen. Okay. So moving on into the card.
Are we moving on to the card?
Yeah. Unless you had something you wanted to add.
Well, on Christmas Eve, we had some additions to the Tall Tales political intel line. And I mentioned that the chief of police would be Stephen Ignacio and vice would be Frank Leon Guerrero. But I found out that vice would mean that Steve Ignacio was put in place of Frank Leon Guerrero, who we previously decrypted was supposed to be the chief of police.
So it's Ignacio in for Leon Guerrero.
It's Ignacio in for Frank Leon Guerrero, and Frank Leon Guerrero will not be the chief of police or the second in command.
Okay, so that first decryption came through a little bit garbled, right?
Yes, but it's noteworthy to mention now that it's going to be chief of police Steve Ignacio.
Okay. And we're still looking for a first name for the director of corrections, right?
Yes, sir. As far as I know, all I was able to decrypt was Brennan, and the first name is still it's still too garbled to decipher.
Okay. Well, thank you, Real Joe Cruz.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, so we'll put Lou Leon Guerrero's $250,000 inaugural aside and move on to the next item on the calendar here, which is called the United States versus military retirees. And if you are a military retiree, I think you'll find this very interesting. even if you're not, you might find it interesting anyhow. I do. And what I have here, it's going to take me a little while to spin this all out, but there is a petition for certiorari pending before the Supreme Court of the United States. And it's a military justice petition. The way military justice works like this, let's say it's Marine Corps, a general court-martial, from a general court-martial there is appeal to the Navy Marine Corps Court of Criminal Appeals. From there is an appeal to the Court of Military Appeals. And from the Court of Military Appeals, a dissatisfied person can petition the United States Supreme Court for review. And this is exactly what has happened in a case called Stephen Larrabee versus the United States. And I've got the questions presented here. In the United States, Ex Rel. Toth versus Quarles, this court held that the armed forces could not constitutionally court-martial civilian ex-soldiers who had severed all relationship with the military and its institutions. This happened back in 1955, even for offenses committed while on active duty. Petitioner in this case is a retired Marine who was tried and convicted by court-martial for offenses committed after he'd been discharged from active duty and with no relationship to his military status. The lower courts nevertheless rejected his constitutional challenge to the exercise of military jurisdiction, concluding that those in a retired status remain members of the land and naval forces who may face court-martial for any and all crimes they commit while retired. The questions presented are: 1, whether the Constitution permits the court-martial of a retired military service member. 2, whether, if so, the Constitution limits the jurisdiction of courts-martial in such cases to offenses that are related to the retiree's military status. Well, right now, the answers to those questions are: question 1, yes, Constitution does permit the court-martial of a retired military service member. Question 2, does the Constitution limit the jurisdiction of court-martial in such cases to offenses that are related to the retiree's military status? No. So what happened in this case, Larrabee versus the United States, Larrabee retired from the Marine Corps and went to work as a manager of a couple of bars, probably pretty close to the base. And about 3 months later, he was busted for the sexual harassment of one of the people in the bar and photographing that sexual harassment. He was picked up by military authorities. He was put in the brig. He went to a general court-martial. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to 10 years, a reprimand, and a dishonorable discharge. Now, a good place to start with this is once again, United States Constitution. And the United States Constitution at Article 1, Section 8 reads as follows. At Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 14, it reads, when constructed, the Congress shall have power to provide for, as you were, to make rules for the government and regulation of the naval forces. The government shall have the power to make rules for the government, or the Congress shall have the power to make rules for the government and regulation of the naval forces. Now, of course, all of you sea dogs out there know that those rules are called the Uniform Code of Military Justice, right? Before about 1952, I think the Navy and the Army had their own sets, but it became uniform in about 52. So we go from there to the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which reads, "No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury." Can't start a criminal case unless there's an indictment by a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces. So the whole panoply of criminal law protections in the Bill of Rights don't necessarily apply to military justice. In fact, many of them don't apply to military justice. So when Mr. Larrabee, actually it was Staff Sergeant Larrabee, you kind of pick up these little clues as you go along. How does a guy do 20 years and get discharged as a Staff Sergeant in the Marine Corps? That takes a lot of skill. In a kind of a negative sense. I mean, if you aren't a better producer than that, your chances of staying in for 20 years are not good. But anyhow, he retired 20 years as a staff sergeant before he was brought before the court-martial. He was, as I mentioned, he was found guilty, sustained by the Navy Marine Corps Court of Criminal Appeals, and sustained by the Court of Military Appeals. So the rule is, yes, you can court-martial a person, a retired member can be court-martialed for offenses that did not relate to his military service, simply because he's retired. Now, if you're a retiree, stop and think what that means. Now, it probably doesn't mean much, because I don't think there's much emphasis for most situations for military commanders to go out and find retirees to court-martial. But it can happen. And that's what happened in this particular case. Now, I've got a pretty good commentary here on this, and then I will add a couple of other interesting facts along with the fact that Larrabee was retired as a staff sergeant. And this article comes from the website The Hill. Almost 2 million U.S. military retirees are currently subject to military criminal jurisdiction for any alleged misconduct, in addition to their state and federal criminal exposure. This military jurisdiction is not just for crimes committed while they were on active duty and discovered later, nor is it only for uniquely military crimes. It is total. Every military retiree can be court-martialed for behavior engaged in long after they took off their uniform, due only to the fact that such retirees receive a military pension. This troubling overreach poses grave constitutional concerns. The military justice system not only utilizes unique criminal procedures, it also includes an incredibly broad expanse of uniquely military crimes. Its penal code includes both common law crimes like murder and theft, plus offenses that simply aren't crimes in the civilian arena, ranging from adultery to being late to work. The U.S. Supreme Court should take advantage of a current opportunity to fix its aberration by granting a military retiree's pending court-martial petition. For example, should retired Admiral Bill McRaven, the famous U.S. Navy SEAL and previous commander of Special Operations Command, who oversaw the Osama bin Laden raid, be criminally prosecuted for publicly taking issue with President Trump in his widely cited August op-ed? Of course not. He can't be so charged in any civilian jurisdiction because the First Amendment shields Americans from jail for uttering or whispering disparaging words about their political leaders. This shield has become one of our strongest civil liberties. However, while American civilians have robust speech rights, Americans in uniform do not. Service members can be court-martialed for a wide swath of speech that is constitutionally protected for civilians, such as retired Admiral McRaven's op-ed critical of the Commander-in-Chief. Since the military justice system extends to its retirees and has been increasingly used to court-martial such pensioners, surely military crimes like contemptuous speech and conduct unbecoming an officer extend to all military pensioners. This is wrong 3 times over. On the constitutional front, the fairness front, and the necessity front. Yes, the military should be able to prosecute its troops when necessary. Most Americans exposed to high-profile court-martial understand the necessity of a special military justice system. Most typical crimes committed by service members, such as theft, assault, and drug use, destroy the military's valuable good order and discipline. So does conduct, including speech that isn't criminal outside the military, like being late to work, desertion, failure to obey, and insubordination. Such breakdown in unit cohesion risks mission failure and jeopardizes national security, hence must be swiftly punished by the special community it most directly harms. The nexus between harmful conduct and its deleterious effect on military discipline justifies crimes within the military that are untenable outside of it, such as behavior by a sentinel or adultery. It also supports military crimes that would be plainly unconstitutional outside the military. For example, disrespect to a superior commissioned officer and words contemptuous of the President or Congress are each military crimes that constitute First Amendment protected speech if uttered by a civilian. The direct connection between such speech by those in uniform and its resultant harm squares these crimes with current free speech jurisprudence. But this strong nexus exists only for those actually in uniform. For military retirees, the potential negative effect of a pensioner's conduct on good order and discipline is too speculative and sketchy to justify putting aside the constitutional safeguards both procedurally and substantively. The military argues that this anachronistic retiree jurisdiction is based on the illusion that a military pension is a type of retainer pay requiring retirees to be ready to be involuntarily recalled to active service when needed. The Supreme Court squarely disagrees, at least in tax context, instead characterizing military retired pay as pension for services rendered. And further rejoinder to the military's argument, the military reserves are the forces that stand ready and drill regularly to remain ready to be called to active duty when national security demands, not octogenarian retirees. I take that kind of personally. If and when a military retiree engages in criminal conduct, the state or U.S. attorney should be appropriately prosecute him or her, not the military, through court-martial, primarily designed for swift imposition of punishment for offenses harmful to the services. Hopefully, the U.S. Supreme Court will take advantage of the case before it to end this unfair overreach. If not, Congress must act to end this unconstitutional military criminal jurisdiction over military retirees who are civilians receiving a monthly check for proud service to their country. So that's the commentary. To once again, so to sum up, if you are a retiree, you could be prosecuted. You could be brought back in and put on active duty and brought before a court-martial and prosecuted, for instance, for making critical remarks about the president or about the Congress. Now, again, the chances of that happening aren't great, but it is kind of a scary proposition, don't you think, retirees? And as the review that I read makes clear, it really doesn't serve any purpose because the court-martial jurisdiction and the UCMJ is designed for active duty servicemen, not for people who are no longer in the service, but are, as the article points out, are civilians drawing a pension. So what actually happened in this case, Larrabee, I read the entire petition for certiorari, and I'm probably ready to recommend that the Supreme Court grant this petition for certiorari and rule in Larrabee's favor. But here, Stephen Larrabee, Staff Sergeant Stephen Larrabee, was stationed at Iwakuni Marine Corps Air Station, Japan, right? And 3 months after he was, after he retired at Iwakuni, excuse me, as a staff sergeant, he was managing a bar, and as I mentioned earlier, he sexually assaulted probably one of the employees of the bar, and took a sagacious video of her with his phone. And he was brought in, and he was court-martialed and sentenced to 10 years, a reprimand, and dishonorable discharge. Well, the sentence was somewhat reduced, but the jurisdictional challenge went nowhere. The Court of Military Appeals went right along with it and said, you know, you're not entitled to an indictment by a grand jury. The way that we read the law is that a retired person is subject to a court-martial for any offense that he's charged with, that even if it has no nexus whatsoever with his military service. Now, this is my speculation as to what happened. I think there was probably a foreign policy dimension to this particular situation. So as you know, the relationship of the United States military and the government of Japan, and especially the provincial government of, or prefectural government of Okinawa, is people are walking on eggshells there. So my suspicion is this, that the mayor of Iwakuni, when he found out what Staff Sergeant at Larrabee did, was very, very angry. And he went to the commanding officer of Iwakuni Marine Corps Air Station and says, you guys got to do something about this. And of course, the commanding officer of MCAS was the convening authority for the court-martial. I think military justice for Japan is handled out of Okinawa, because there was a item in the appeal of undue command influence that was not sustained. So in order to maintain international peace on a very, very local level here at Iwakuni, Staff Sergeant Larrabee turned out to be the scapegoat and was prosecuted by a general court-martial for something that had nothing to do with his military service, and if committed by a civilian, would have been handled in the Japanese court. So that's my speculation. Okay, we're coming up on the 7th inning stretch here, and once again, because the Real Joe was so busy with his decrypting, we don't have the Real Joe Cruz doing Yogi Berra show today.
Boldly styled, meticulously refined, the 2019 ES350 features a longer, wider stance and a sleek coupe-like silhouette inherited from the flagship LS. The ES350 offers an ultimate level of comfort, while cutting-edge engineering delivers a thrilling drive. Visit the Lexus showroom today at Atkins Kroll during the December to Remember sales event. Drive home a 2019 ES350 for 0 down and 1.99% APR for 60 months. Terms and conditions apply. See dealer for details. Experience amazing.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
There are thousands of books and articles on how to manage and optimize time, and still, we struggle with the concept. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll look at a new contender, time boxing. I'll tell you what it's all about.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
So that's the situation that Stephen Larrabee is in right now. As I mentioned, he has a petition pending before the United States Supreme Court. Ordinarily, there are 8,000 petitions filed in a given year. 80 of them are granted. So if the Supreme Court doesn't grant Stephen Larrabee's petition, he's stuck with that sentence, and retirees are stuck with that law that says that a retiree can be tried by court-martial for any crime, whether it had anything to do with his military service or not. The Congress, of course, could change this in a heartbeat. I suspect that in the times in which we live, there would be very little incentive for any any representative or senator to get too deeply involved with something like military court-martials, especially here in Larrabee's case, because the victim was a female, which would make it just hands-off for anybody in Congress. So we'll put that aside, and then I'm going to go back and pick up something that I started a couple days ago, and I just barely got into it. As I mentioned, the card is really thin today because there aren't too many people bickering with people, one with the other. And so I kind of lapse into social commentary at times like this, and I've got this piece that I got from Counterpunch called What Socialism Can and Can't Do. And this is not a piece by a conservative telling you how bad socialism is. This is by a socialist telling you what it can and can't do. I think there's some really valuable lessons involved here. So I'm going to start over with this one, right? And the first sentence, this tells you so much. Socialism seeks to transform societies and persons. bringing them to a higher state of social justice and personal and ethical responsibility than is possible under capitalist economic systems. Now that's quite a sentence. Socialism seeks to transform persons. As a somewhat reasonable person, I'm prepared to listen to just about anybody's spiel. And if I agree with it, I might go along with it. I might go along with some of it. I might go along with all of it, or might disagree with the whole thing. But I'm not ready to be transformed yet. Yeah, Ishmael Veliz, what's going on with a filibuster here on our Facebook page?
What's that, sir?
I asked Ishmael Veliz if he knows what's going on with the filibuster on our Facebook page.
I don't know, sir. It looks like what they call a troll. Someone who's using cuss words and just constantly posting.
Posting nothing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, behind an anonymous name.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's make a note of it and report him to the Facebook police, huh? Okay, anyhow, socialism seeks to transform societies and persons, bringing them to a higher stage of social justice and personal and ethical responsibility than is possible under capitalist economic systems. And then the rhetorical question, can it do so? My answer is, I sure hope not. I don't want to see a form of government transforming people and societies. And words like personal and ethical responsibility sound really nice, but ethical responsibility as determined by whom? My experiences living and working in both the United States and Cuba, the writer here says, nations emblematic of advanced capitalism and third world socialism have enabled me to discern what socialism can and cannot do. And the last time we did this, I mentioned that I am the Tall Tales think tank expert on Cuba, having spent some time there a couple of years ago. And I think I probably even made a report on Tall Tales. On the basis of study of socialist projects in the world and contradictions of the world system, I have arrived to a reformulation of Marx's understanding of the stages of economic and social development in human history. So this guy not only is going to transform people, this is a guy named Charles McKelvey, who is a professor emeritus at Presbyterian College in Clinton, South Carolina. Wow. And here's some of the things he's written. Beyond Ethnocentrism, a reconstruction of Marx's concept of science. The African American movement, from Pan-Africanism to the Rainbow Coalition, and the evolution and significance of the Cuban Revolution, the light and the darkness. His blog, The View from the South, Commentaries on World Events from the Third World Perspective, is also there. So this guy not only wants to transform people, but he's also going to reshape Karl Marx. In my view, at the present historic juncture, we are at the early moments of a stage of global transition to socialism. At the present time, socialist movements have taken political power in 7 nations in East Asia and Latin America. And I tried to name them last time. And the 7 socialist nations that I came up with are China, North Korea, Vietnam, Cuba, Venezuela, and California. I'm a little bit short there. Yeah, maybe I'm being a little too hard on Vietnam. have taken political power in 7 nations, East Asia and Latin America. The 7 states seeking to construct socialism have important allies among other states, and they have relations with many states. However, the great majority of nations continue to have capitalist political economies, and the world economy is driven principally by a capitalist logic. The core states of the capitalist world economy, which are in North America and Western Europe, that's where the villains are, direct the world economy in accordance with their imperialist interests, thus imposing global structural constraints on the economic development of the declared socialist nations. In addition, the core states seek to undermine the governments of the declared socialist states, seeing them as threats to the neo-colonial world order, world system. They impose economic sanctions and adopt various interventionist measures. Moreover, their ownership of the media of communication, the core nations are able to disseminate capitalist values as well as ideological distortions of the socialist projects. So I suppose a lot of this news that comes out of Venezuela is a distortion. Nevertheless, the limitations of capitalism are becoming increasingly evident, creating greater ideological possibilities for socialist movements. The ongoing process of human economic and social development has established the possibilities for socialism. At the same time, the stage of human development in which we find ourselves limits what socialism is able to do. As we seek to understand what socialism can and cannot do, we should keep in mind the possibilities that are created and the limitations that are imposed in the current stage of human social and economic development. Well, I'll give him one credit for one thing. He can use a lot of words and not say very much. Socialism has demonstrated that it's possible to accomplish a revolutionary transformation of education. Now, boy, we're seeing that in spades, aren't we, in the United States, where we're squelching free speech, where everyone who is enrolled in any course, the last word of which is studies, is the local campus distributor for hate America propaganda. And every campus has its share of them, where we have we pay a whole lot more attention to diversity than we do to scholarship. So he says socialism has demonstrated that it's possible to accomplish a revolutionary transformation of education. Yep. I refer here not to the fact that education is equally available to all, but to the content of the teaching. You're right. In capitalist societies, higher education claims a mission of dedication to the quest for truth. God, how awful. Inasmuch as revolution seeks social structure transformations that are based in truth, it would appear that a sincere revolutionary in a capitalist society would be able to do intellectual work in higher education. However, committed revolutionaries doing intellectual work in higher education in capitalist societies discover resistance and repression in practice. Yeah, well, they're the ones that are practicing it. Socialism, on the other hand, is able to liberate the search for truth and the teaching of discovered insights from constraints imposed on educational systems by capitalism. And societies seeking to construct socialism, the socialism of revolutionary goals, is integral to the mission of education. Now, I think a lot of college administrations have bought into this one. In societies seeking to construct socialism, the socialization of revolutionary goals is integral to the mission of education. As a consequence of the socialist transformation of education, a declared socialist nation can create a revolutionary people. So you socialize the universities, and then once you've done that, you can create a revolutionary people. That is to say, it is able to forge people that understand the fundamentals of human history and of contemporary social dynamics. A people that actively participates in structures of popular democracy, appreciating that they are more democratic than representative democracy, because the interests of the wealthy do not distort the political process. A people that grasp the role of imperialism in maintaining the neo-colonial world system. A people that recognizes the social and economic rights of all persons, including full and equal access to education, health, housing, nutrition, transportation, culture, and sport. Full and equal access. A people that understands the necessary role of the state as the formulator and director of a plan for social and economic development as a major actor in the country. A people that knows that in the international plane there must be cooperation among nations and solidarity among peoples. A people that knows that each person has to protect his or her own interests, but we all must care for one another. In the present stage of human development, the nations that are seeking to construct socialism cannot provide the social and economic rights of the people. Let me repeat that. In the present stage of human development, the nations that are seeking to construct socialism cannot fully provide the social and economic rights of the people. In the case of Cuba, for example, full and equal access to education, health, culture, and sport in essence exists. However, there is unequal access to housing and transportation. Minimal nutrition is available to all. But there are more options for those with greater financial resources. Well, if you go to Cuba, housing is really not that hot. A place like one of our neighborhoods, like Kaiser, would be seen as extremely high class if you were in Havana. And as far as transportation is concerned, if you travel intercity, here's one of the means of traveling intercity. As you drive through the countryside, you'll see these gathering places with a lot of people standing around at the gathering place, and someone who looks like a government official standing there with a clipboard. And I found out what this is. Any government official vehicle traveling from point A to point B must stop and pick up passengers at these gathering places. Okay, we're coming right down to the show, and I are both coming right down to the home stretch, so I'll be back in just a minute.
What are the benefits of switching to the handset payment option with GTA? For starters, you can customize a plan that matches your budget and lowers your monthly payment. HPO lets you upgrade to the latest phones whenever you want. No more waiting for a contract to end to get that slimmer, faster smartphone. Because with HPO, there are no contracts. HPO lets you design a phone plan that suits you. So join the thousands who've already switched to HPO, the most customizable phone plan on island. Limited time offer. Terms and conditions apply.
Cheers to 80 years. It's our 80th anniversary and the gifts are on us. 80 gift certificates, 8 shopping sprees, 8 staycations, and 1 round-trip flyaway for 2 to Manila. So how do you enter? Calvo's Insurance personal home and auto customers are automatically entered. Non-Calvo's customers may enter by receiving a qualified quote. It's our way of saying thank you for trusting us for the past 80 years. For more details, visit calvos.com/giveaway or call 472-6816. Calvo's Insurance, serving Guam for 80 years.
Jeff's Pirates Cove, open daily at 8 a.m., serving up hot breakfast with endless coffee and a taste of history.
So here we are back in Tall Tales for the home stretch, and right now I imagine yourself in the streets of Havana, Cuba. So if you want to go from Cuba to another city, that's one way to go, and the government vehicle, whatever it happens to be, will stop at that queue of people, and a man with a clipboard will take care of the boarding, and then you must pay a fare to the government to ride on that government vehicle. Inner city buses aren't that common. There's a railroad that runs from Havana to Santiago, but when I was there, I never saw a train on that railroad, and nobody wants to talk about the railroad at all. I have a feeling it just doesn't work. The standard of living in Cuba, let's see, this article says,
So you've been to Cuba, Bob?
Yeah, I've been to Cuba.
I'm not going to ask for what, because you probably have to kill me or something.
Yeah, it's all top secrets. Yeah, I've been to North Korea too, Real Joe Cruz.
I'm not going to ask any questions about that either, sir.
All right, so when I see these people extolling the beauties of socialism, I don't buy it. I've been to I was in the Soviet Union before the Soviet Union fell apart. I was there in 1970. I was in the Deutsche Demokratische Republik, and the whatever Socialist Republic of Poland, and if that's paradise, I'll go to the other place if those are the only two alternatives. It just doesn't work. Just on the man in the street level, it doesn't work at all. And I've been to some of the former Iron Curtain countries like Czech Republic and Slovakia and Hungary, and none of those people want to go back to what they had before, because just on the man in the street level, it doesn't work. On the man up in the ivory tower, it's worse and doesn't work because it's very dangerous. The socialist leaders, people like Stalin, have killed millions and millions of people throughout American history. So you could take your most black-hearted capitalist that ever walked the street, and he would be a saint to the average compared to the average communist ruler. So I get a kick out of this stuff. And the reason I think it's necessary to go through this, because young people nowadays, I bet there are a lot of them out there in my international radio listening audience, right? Probably a lot of teenagers and early 20s, etc. Yeah, probably grooving on this program, but I hope some of the word gets through to them, because some people think socialism is good. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, yeah, I'm a socialist. Bernie Sanders, I'm a socialist. And they're not, people don't throw rotten eggs at them. It's just amazing to me, because I think I really understand how socialism works and what it can do and what it can't do. And it's enlightening to see the socialists lay this out. But I think it's important that we realize that the capitalist free market system that we have right now has done more to improve the lives of more people than at any time ever in the history of the world. People are living better now than they've ever lived in the world before. Even people that we would say are really poor are much better off than they were 300 years ago. And it's because we have a capitalist free market system, and we're not saddled with statist socialism, although there are those in our country that are working really hard to take us to that result. So going back to this article, the author says, there is unequal access to housing and transportation. Boy, is that true. Minimal nutrition is available, which means a lot of people are hungry. That's the socialist way of saying minimal nutrition is available. There are a lot of hungry folks there. Minimal nutrition is available to all, but there are more options for those with greater financial resources. Now, that shouldn't be. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you should have more nutrition, better housing, etc. Because the only way you'd get more money would be, well, you'd have to work harder. Nor can the declared socialist nations convert the people into a vanguard. Now, here's a really scary concept that this guy comes up with, the word vanguard, which doesn't, you know, which is a nice choice of words because it doesn't scare you when you hear the word vanguard. Oh, yeah, Tall Tales is in the vanguard of issue-oriented talk shows in the Western Pacific. It sounds good, right? The great majority of people understand the fundamentals, but they do not. They are not habituated to theoretical and historical reflection. This is what we would call the low-information socialists. The people think concretely. They understand what they need and want and what they have and don't have, but they do not spontaneously interpret their situation in historical or global context. Now, guess who they need to have do this for them? Yeah. They have to be reminded periodically of the fundamentals that they understand, and a politically conscious vanguard fulfills this pedagogical role. Now, I think it's what Karl Marx called the dictatorship, or excuse me, Vladimir Lenin called the dictatorship of the proletariat, this vanguard, right? A politically conscious vanguard fulfills this pedagogical role. It teaches these dumb people who think concretely what they really need to know about socialism. The nations constructing socialism have demonstrated that they can forge a vanguard from the people. The vanguard consists of persons habituated to critical, theoretical, and practical reflection, committed to doing concrete revolutionary tasks in places of work, in government, and in civil society, and committed to the fundamental goals of the revolution, regularly making sacrifices in its defense. The vanguard fulfills important roles in the principal institutions of the society, in mass organizations and in structures of popular power, and the people appreciate their qualities of understanding and commitment. These would be the socialist leaders, the socialist cadre who really understand the theoretical bases of all of this and must habituate the low information socialists to these concepts so they can be committed to the fundamental goals of revolution. Well, here's the 1812 overture from the Russians driving Napoleon out of Russia, so I guess that's a pretty good place to wind it up for today. I'm just about talked out today, folks, so thanks for bearing with me and my cough, and I'll see you tomorrow.